Hey y'all, my name is Shane Hernandez and I'm a graduate student at the University of Georgia. Today I'm really excited to get to talk about DCAD, or dietary cation anion difference supplementation in beef cattle. Before I can talk about DCAD in beef, I really need to provide some exposition in past and current DCAD research. But let's just start with minerals. Beef cattle require a number of minerals for optimal growth and reproductive success. Beyond growth and reproduction, minerals are essential to key physiological functions that include acid-base balance, gut integrity, enzyme activity, and many more. Other examples include water homeostasis, blood pressure regulation, osmolarity homeostasis, and even bone deposition and stability. So it's clear that minerals play an essential role in biological life, and these minerals that play that role are known as essential minerals. They come in two classifications, macro and micro minerals, and they differ based off of abundance in diet. So macro minerals are typically measured on a grams per day basis versus micro, which is typically measured on a parts per million basis. They both come in positively and negatively charged ions, and macro minerals include potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, and negatively charged ions such as sulfur, phosphorus, and chloride. And microminerals or trace minerals include zinc, cobalt, copper, iron, manganese, and negatively charged species like iodine and selenium. Recently, microminerals have gained a lot of traction in research due to the possible health benefits they may provide, although we will not be talking about microminerals today. Based off the species, dietary requirements will change. And so it's important to know what you're feeding to and what you're feeding. And typically, high quality forages and feed sources like wheat and corn and soy will satisfy dietary requirements, although you can supplement if needed. I included a table just to show that there is mineral concentration variability based off your feed source. So, again, it's important to know what you're feeding and what you're feeding to so we know we are satisfying these requirements. It's also important to take note of mineral interactions. We don't feed minerals in isolation. They often interact with multiple minerals at once, and so it's important to note these minerals when these interactions when we increase different concentrations in the diet. But we can take advantage of these interactions to produce some unique benefits to producers and the animal. One way we can take advantage of these interactions is by changing the salt levels or the electrolyte balance in that ration. So three common ways to do that is through the dietary electrolyte balance, or sodium, potassium, chloride concentration in the diet, DCAD, which we'll talk about later, which is sodium, potassium, chloride, and sulfur, and the unidentified anion balance, which we will not be talking about today. I wanted to start with dietary electrolyte balance research because it provides a good foundation to talk about DCAD. 1994, Dr. Ross performed a wonderful study on steers where he increased the dietary electrolyte balance, and he observed significant increase in dry matter intake as he increased the dietary electrolyte balance. Although he did not see a significant difference in average daily gain or gain to feed ratios, nor did he see any significant difference in their carcass values. He did observe, however, a significant change in pH values. As he increased the dietary electrolyte balance, he saw an increase in pH and an increase in bicarbonate concentration. After 84 days with increasing dietary electrolyte balance, he observed an increase in carbon dioxide concentration within the blood. And an increase in carbon dioxide represents an alkalinic state within the animal. So he was able to interact with the acid-base balance simply by changing the salts in the animal's diet. Hayden performed a similar study, except in swine in 1990, and while he did not see similar dry matter intake changes, he did see similar physiological changes within the acid-base balance. And so he observed an increase in pH, an increase in bicarbonate, as he increased dietary electrolyte balance within the diet. Finally, DCAD. So DCAD has been thoroughly researched in dairy cattle, and there are some promising benefits in the beef industry utilizing DCAD, although those benefits haven't been thoroughly researched. Similar to the dietary electrolyte balance, when feeding a positive DCAD diet to cows, they've observed an increase in dry matter intake. They've observed an increase in blood pH, an increase in bicarbonate in the blood, an increase in urine pH, and surprisingly, even an increase in milk yield, which might be driven due to the increase in dry matter intake. But what's most important to the dairy research when it comes to DCAD is the interaction with negative DCAD and calcium. So a study performed by Dr. Amerson out of Wisconsin induced hypocalcemia in cows. She then fed various levels of DCAD and measured the effect or measured recovery. She observed that negative DCAD actually produced the quickest recovery state in the animal. And dairy producers utilize this interaction to help prevent milk fever. So when the cow begins to lactate, the calcium demand spikes. And if there's not enough calcium available to the animal, she begins to experience hypocalcemia, or what's known as milk fever. To prevent this, negative DCAD diets may be fed pre-partition in order to create a favorable chemoosmotic gradient, which really induces an increase in calcium mobilization from bone. So it has this increased supply of calcium available for partition when this increased calcium demand happens, which mitigates and limits milk fever. When it comes to beef, however, there isn't a lot of research, and a lot of the dairy research can possibly be applied to the beef industry to produce some wonderful benefits. One benefit could be to utilize DCAD and its interaction with acid-base balance to limit subacute ruminal acidosis. Subacute ruminal acidosis occurs in feedlots where they feed high concentrate diets. These high concentrate diets will often drop the pH in the animal for a certain amount of time. And if this continues to happen and that animal stays in that acidotic state for long, you will see decreases in intake and gain, and it ultimately hurts productivity of the animal. And so if we can feed positive DCAD diets to these beef cattle, which we have seen in dairy cattle and swine to increase pH, we could possibly limit this ruminal acidotic state and limit the loss in daily gain and productivity in general. Stress is also an issue with these animals. When they experience heat stress or reproductive stress, they also experience a decrease in dry matter intake and ultimately gain. And we might be able to utilize DCAD, which in chickens and swine has shown to increase water intake, limit or mitigate the detrimental impacts of heat stress. And by ultimately limiting stress, we might be able to mitigate lipopolysaccharide damage. So LPS occurs when gram-negative bacteria begin to lyse, and the rumen, as wonderful as it is filled with a lot of gram-negative bacteria. And so when this animal is challenged or experiences stress, these bacteria begin to die off and release an increased amount of LPS into the system. So if we can limit that stress, we might be able to limit that damage. Although all of these points really need to be researched. And I hope in the future we can actually participate in some DCAD research moving forward. I really want to thank everyone for the opportunity to give this talk. I am really interested in DCAD and hope to be a participant in this future research. I've included my references, and I hope I've